All right, let's get started. Welcome to the, I don't remember what month it is. September work session. All right, Mrs. Armstrong, Mr. Foray, and Mrs. Ravenfeld aren't able to make it this evening. All right, comments from the student rep. What's going on? School started, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a busy 2 weeks with everything going on, but it seems like everything's going well and everyone's enjoying it. One thing the student council did was we revised the student council constitution. It's not been done for a long time, and so we updated it to like 2019, more recent things. We specified like position roles for president, vice president, and secretary and treasurer. There's more criteria for actually running for office and the voting procedures that are going on. There are 3 new committees, the Student Advisory Committee, the Election Committee, and the Diversity Committee. Specifically, the Diversity Committee, we're working to parallel the district's Diversity Committee that's starting to come into effect, just to stay with the times. As for keeping up with the student voice, I'm working with Mr. Doyle in the tech department to help get voting and surveying online, maybe through Canvas or some other app. Just so the middle school did a test with this, but something didn't go right. But we think that we can save the paper for the ballots and get everything done quicker through technology. And for my role specifically, just get more of a gauge on the student body's opinions and things that they care about. As for the Instagram page that we created, and I talked a little bit about last time, we made a couple of posts about using issue track and how to submit that, and just a couple of other things that we think would be interesting for the students to hear. So we will keep posting on there, and hopefully we'll get more followers.
Was there any uptick in issues submitted through issue track?
I don't have any data on that.
Not really? Okay.
Not much yet. It's September, so we definitely have a lot of issue tracks at this point, so.
As for general news that's going on in the school, it's been busy, but it's been also fun. A couple of big important things that have happened was we dedicated the newly surfaced tennis courts to Paul Waltz and Meg Zarfus for a long time of coaching between both of them, and the state champions for the boys, which that was my team, so that's cool. Our student body vice president, Jack Mishler, he is the president of the Chester County Student Forum, which is a group that meets a couple of times a month, and they just discuss issues important to students. The Desmond class is putting on sports night this week, and the girls' soccer team beat Unionville for the first time in 9 years. So that's a pretty good start to the season. And yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yep, that's what I have.
Thank you. All right. IU report?
Yes, sir.
Is my mic on? Okay, sorry about that. That meeting marked the first meeting for our new executive director, Dr. George Fiore. We discussed his 100-day plan, which is leadership transition. He discussed how he believed this to be vital to his ability to continue the great things and to lead the CCIU. We had some really great things happen with students, so I want to focus on that. TCHS Brandywine Skills USA students win silver medals at nationals. From June the 24th to the 29th, 7 students from the Brandywine campus participated in the Skills USA National Convention, which was held in Louisville. In order to attend, students had to win a local district and state competition. The Occupational Health and Safety team, which consisted of Taylor Sandy, who was a 12th grader in the Veterinary Science Technology at Downingtown East, Rachel Gamel, grade 11, Health Career Pathways, who is homeschooled, and Emily Watson, grade 11, Criminal Justice and Police Sciences at Bishop Shanahan, finished second. The event required 4 individual projects. The participants, Sophia Eberly, grade 11, was Health Career Pathways in Coatesville, participated in the first aid and CPR competition and finished 8th out of a total of 33 contestants. The American Spirit team, which consisted of 3 students, Marlon Gonzalez, grade 12, Early Childhood Education in Coatesville, Stephanie Rojas, grade 12, Health Career Pathways in Coatesville, and Susanna Angst, grade 12, Early Childhood Education, who was homeschooled, all finished 10th. Students participating in the event needed to complete 3 projects, which included a community service project, a patriotism project, and a promotion of career and technical education project. All the students did do an excellent job, and they were great representatives of the IU. Students win gold and silver at the Pennsylvania Future Farmers of America Convention. During the FFA Activities Convention, which happened in June at Penn State main campus, Penix Bridge animal and veterinary science students completed a veterinary science and wildlife through the CDE event. There were over 100 students participating in each of the competitions. The 4 students from Penix Bridge Veterinary Science Team won gold and received special recognition, earning them a trip to the Big E in Springfield, Massachusetts in September. Sydney Schumacher, grade 12 at Kennett, completed an individual in the Wildlife CDE and received a silver medal for her efforts. And then just some information, Brandywine Virtual Academy summer enrollment was up 34%. This is a 34% increase from summer enrollments during 2017-18. Jumpstart's a 15-week session that started on April 23rd and allows students the opportunities to take original credit or explore new courses of study. There were 139 Jumpstart enrollments this summer compared to the summer of 2017-18, and it's a 6.7% decrease. However, BVA saw substantial growth in true summer and credit recovery enrollments. The CCIU hosted over 60 educators for the Grading and Reporting Institute with Dr. Thomas Gusky, which focused on reframing of all the ways we communicate information about student learning and what we know about effective grading and reporting policies and practices. There were teams from 11 districts, some outside of Chester County. Great Valley did participate. I did speak with Dr. O'Toole, did a little brain picking to actually find out what it was that we found to be useful. And overall, he was thrilled with what they provided and looks forward to the 3 follow-up opportunities before the session is over. So I let Dr. O'Toole know that I intend to ask him because I would like the board to take a little higher role on these type of things. As board members, I shared this with Stephen, we don't discuss the nuts and bolts of these initiatives prior to them happening. I'm interested in the nuts and bolts. So I would really like to make that a target for the rest of this year for myself. So that's a great thing. Finance, the board approved the renewal of the contract with Avon Grove School District to provide facilities management services. The board also approved the submission of the application for FY 2020 funds to support our Head Start and Home-Based Early Head Start program. And personnel, we did approve all recommended personnel action items, including routine terminations, resignations, retirements, nominations, changes in status, creation of positions, supplemental salaries, and pay rates. I like to read all that because this truly is a job, and we did do a lot of work. Dr. Fiore hit the ground running. I also would like to entertain that, since Dr. Fiore is new to the CCIU, I would really love for the entire board to have an opportunity to meet and ask some questions. He certainly is different from Dr. O'Brien. He has some great ideas, and I really think we have not had the CCIU come in a while. I would love maybe if we could arrange that to just welcome him, have him come in, so we can meet him, and if the board has any questions, now's the time to ask. Could we entertain that, inviting him in? We good? Regina, could you take care of that? Thank you. And that's it for me.
All right, third day enrollment. How do we do?
We're doing good. So here's the report. It was attached to the agendas. See if I can advance this thing.
You were right.
There we go. So I want to give acknowledgement to Mr. Linderman. He did an excellent job in his projections from a year ago. And I'll get into a little more detail here. Make it, oh, okay. Maximize it. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the yellow bar represents the projected enrollment and the black represents the actual enrollment. And you can see in all cases, both elementary, middle school, and high school, the projected is very close to the actual. And the actual numbers projected was 4,373 students. And the third day enrollment taken on August 28th this year was 4,416. Now we have some breakdowns by elementary, middle school, and high school. And you can see here the biggest discrepancy is kindergarten, because back when these were done, you were still looking at a half-day program. And so that was a 25% variance. The projected was 244, and we have 304 students. But the other grade levels are all very close, within a couple students. And overall, the totals, whoops. Get the right button here. The projected was 1950 for elementary, and the actual was 2006.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So last year, through this whole process, and you may not know this answer, but hopefully you can find out. So we believe that 18 kids went to a charter school for kindergarten. Do we know if those came back?
We are studying that now, and we'll have some more information
Okay,
for you
good.
at the next meeting.
Good.
Okay?
I have a question on the kindergarten number too, because
Sure.
obviously there's a lot more kindergartners. When we were planning the hiring for full-day kindergarten, what number were we basing ourselves on? And did we have to, at the last minute, add a couple teachers? I know we're always able to do that. We're an attractive district, but I'm interested to know how the hiring plan compared to what we actually needed.
Yes, we handled the full-day kindergarten as we do all classes at the elementary, and we base it on the enrollment. And as enrollments were coming in and as class sizes, we were very diligent in monitoring kindergarten to not go over the class size guidelines, even though they're just a guideline, not a cap. We just wanted to make sure with the new programming that we were staying true to that. So yes, we did hire more than we expected, but thankfully it was already in the budget. to allow that to happen.
And the classroom, no, because I remember when we looked at full-day kindergarten, we looked at how many rooms we had available and how many teachers we need to hire, so it sounds like it was a little bit more than that, but we were able to
We were
accommodate it.
absolutely able to accommodate it. And one of the things that you'll see when we look at class sizes, some parents enrolled their children, so we planned our class sizes. Well, as I'm sure many of you can remember, when you had a child in kindergarten, if you had a child in kindergarten, the kindergarten teachers start well before the first day of school in communicating with those children and sending notes home and having, in some cases, the children come in for an orientation. So there's some imbalance then in the class sizes because those children, so maybe we had a class of 20, a class of 20, a class of 20, and a class of 21. We didn't move children out of those classes after the fact if in fact two children didn't show up that day in the same section. We didn't then take two children from another class who had already met their teacher and had that relationship and move them to a different section. So there is some variance, but not enough to have an impact. But when you see that, that is why the variance took place.
Is that true across all grades?
It has the potential to be true across all grades, but you'll notice it more in kindergarten.
I just want to go back to the number question, and how many kindergarten teachers did we think we had to hire, and how many did we need to hire in the end? I just would love to know that comparison.
I'll get an answer for you on that,
Okay.
but I surmise that throughout the budget progress, that as you folks approved full-day kindergarten, and Mr. Linderman adjusted the budget accordingly and should have been real close to what the actual was here.
About the exact, like, was it 5 teachers and we needed 7? Just, I would like to know the number.
Okay. Okay, middle school. The projected was 1,085 and the actual is 1,073. So again, within a 1% variance. Any question on that one? And then finally, high school. If you look at the total there, it's pretty amazing, off by one student. So 1338 versus 1337.
The fact that there's quite a bit of movement in those 4 grades is funny that it comes out within one student.
Yeah. Finally, the total district, as we mentioned before, 4373 versus 4416, which is only overall a 1% variance. This is what Regina was just referring to here. This lists all the classes from K to 5 in the various elementary schools. So it shows in kindergarten in Charlestown, there's a class with 21 and a class with 23. So that's why at times, like, we'll take this 5th grade as an example, and you see one class with 19 and one with 23, you might say, well, why didn't you move some of those kiddos? And it's just a little bit difficult after the kids establish those relationships. Any questions on 3rd day enrollment?
Nope, thanks. All right.
Oh, the next item there is the monthly enrollment report. That's in the format that you're used to seeing it. And if you take a look at that, the only thing that I'll note is it shows the enrollment out of the system, and then it shows the third day enrollment, and it's off by 3 kids. And that's because the 3rd day enrollment is based on numbers that we're getting right directly from the schools, from each principal. And they are instructed to look at all no-shows and make phone calls and try to figure out if the kids are still coming, were they on a planned vacation, was there an emergency? So there's a 3 kiddo variance in that report.
All right, nothing under policy. Superintendent's update.
We have a lot of exciting things to share. Prior to beginning the update, I just wanted to share one piece of very sad news. At the beginning of our school year, our beloved counselor, longtime counselor and colleague and friend passed away on Tuesday, September 2nd. And with the approval of the board, I'd just like to take a moment of silence in honor of the wonderful contribution that Chip Harvey made to the Great Valley School District. In looking at the update, we are now, I feel, I don't know if Mr. Nemeth would agree with me, but I believe we are well into the 2019-2020 school year. And one of the exciting parts of this school year is the addition of our full-day kindergarten. And it would be an oversight not to very publicly thank those who turned the vision into a reality and made it happen. And I have to say, Mr. Abraham and his team, Dr. Beck, Dr. O'Toole and their team, the elementary principals, their teams, our Nicole Melia and her team, a lot of planning and time went into creating the vision and then actually realizing the vision. And I would just, it would be an oversight not to mention the following people who at the 11th hour, in addition to our amazing teachers and our amazing administrators, but in Jim Abraham's team, Pat Scott and Brennan Judge, Carl Shoemaker, Herb Stoffer, Denny Travis, Paul Marziani, Sally Witten, Joe Zhao, Chuck Zook, Ed Brown, Jason Rizzoli, Mark Sperber, Becky Wysocki and Pat Gillespie from the Teaching and Learning Department, and a slew of others that, as we were panicking, worrying that will the furniture actually arrive, I can tell you without missing a beat, folks were here on the Saturday and Sunday before school started, making sure that every single classroom looked very consistent throughout the district, so no early learner in Great Valley School District would feel as though they were not getting the maximum benefit of this opportunity. We will be, on President Barrett's suggestion, doing a visit of the board to a classroom, a kindergarten classroom, prior to the October board workshop meeting, so that you can see the amazing things that are happening. And I have to tell you, the only thing better than seeing the classrooms is seeing the classrooms with children in them, actually learning, having fun. And we are going to have a major update in January with the inclusion of a lot of photographs. We chose to wait till January because, as we preempted, children and teachers are tired. After a summer, independent of what grade you're in, getting back into a structured day is tough. Maximize that by being 5 years old, and we can all imagine there's probably a whole lot of napping going on and falling asleep early. So we'll wait till January until that kicks in, right? So that said, moving on to the superintendent's update, you can see a lot of learning took place this summer. This was our first summer for our summer enrichment programs. A huge shout out to Abby Linderman, who is our supervisor of specialized programs. Not only did we have K through 12 variety of topics, mindfulness, STEAM, reading, SAT prep, field hockey, and more, over 200 students participated in 10 camps that were primarily offered by Great Valley teachers at either half or full day options. In addition to those camps, we also had ESL camp, extended school year, and tech camp. So it was very busy. Our goal this summer is to get the catalog out earlier. We'd like to have the catalog out by January so folks can sign up and make their vacation plans, knowing that they will have spots. We are also going to have online paying, so there won't be the lapse in signing up and registration. So a lot of really exciting things coming, and there was a lot of learning and fun that took place this past summer. Back to school, and I'd just like to give you an opportunity to look at some of the happy faces that you will see. Just love that shirt. I think all of us should get a shirt based upon where we're going, because ready or not, here we come. So a lot of excited students that you can see, excited teachers, and really cool things going on in each of our schools. For the 1920, we are planning to continue the speaker series. We'll host a number of opportunities throughout this year on The focus being on physical and mental well-being of the community in partnership with local community organizations and mental health experts. The speaker series will offer evening learning opportunities for parents, staff, and the community. So you can see that is the first list of those, and then we have another slide with additional opportunities. Although these are open to community members, staff members, students to attend, we ask that folks pre-register so that we can adjust the venue in the event. We've had to do that for a few of our events, just to make sure that folks are comfortable. The district e-newsletter. Community members, if they email their name, address, and the preferred email to communications@gvsd.org, they will receive the district e-news, which is provided following the board voting meeting. And it's a great opportunity to see any policies that have updates. It also includes links to a number of recorded venues, recorded events, and PowerPoints.
That's great that we have that availability for the community. Is that posted on the website somewhere prominently so that if people want to sign up, they know that they can do that?
Yes.
Great.
Anything you can do, we also post it on Facebook, but if there's anything you can do to push it out on other sites to make people more aware of it, I have to say Ms. Blake has done a great job in maximizing the opportunities for community members to become involved. That said, I don't believe there's ever a such thing as over-communicating. So the more we can share and let people know that that's a resource available. Our upcoming events, we have high school back-to-school night, September 17th. The 18th is Sugartown, 19th General Wayne, the 20th is Charlestown, and this past week, last Thursday, was middle school back-to-school night. September 23rd is our first speaker series event, Box Out Bullying. September 25th, the high school financial aid night, and that's for parents of students in grades 8 through 12. September 26th is the flu vaccine clinic at the middle school. The times are posted there. That's also on our website. September 27th, KDM Back to School Social and Book Fair. September 30th, our schools are closed. October 7th is the School Board Finance Committee meeting. October 9th, schools are closed. October 10th is the General Wayne Soup Night. More information will come on a variety of fundraisers that will be offered, and more from General Wayne aligned to that announcement as well. We had discussed our feasibility study and the work that's been done. We mentioned that briefly last month at our August meeting. We will be having our facilities subcommittee meetings dovetailing with our feasibility study updates. So there will not be a facilities meeting tomorrow night. Our first facilities subcommittee meeting, it will be October 15th at 6 o'clock. It will be held in the high school because immediately following at 6:30, we will have a feasibility study presentation by Schrader Architects, which will be the first of 3, October, November, and December, the first of 3 public meetings to discuss the feasibility and arrive at some options to be presented to the board in January. So we'll have that information, and I believe Mr. Peterson will be sharing those dates within this meeting. Correct? Thank you.
the beginning of the school year has been better than expected. You know, usually those first couple weeks are very trying from the
The
transportation
good news
department.
is, we got no emails this year about bus stops.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood, yeah. Well, we're 2 weeks in, so usually they come in the first 2 days, so.
And Mr. Ditweiler told me that when the questions and emails did come in, he was responding to all of them within a 24-hour period. So he got back to folks promptly and fixed the issues, and things are going real well.
So could I have 3 questions, transportation related, if I may? So I do understand that our high school students who have arranged for parking places and to drive to and from school are not assigned a bus. The board did do that as a way of being able to concentrate our efforts and reducing the need for school buses where we didn't really have them. So I get that. But there are times when those children that are driving can't drive. You have an inclement weather day, car's broken down, whatever, for whatever reason. So I do know that we have systems in place. What I'm finding, though, is that our parents do not know what they're supposed to do. The communication that is coming home from the children, and I love all our kids, all 4,400 of our kids I love. But we do know that sometimes what we get home from our children isn't exactly what they were given. But I think that we need to clarify that, Regina, if you would. And then, so that's the first thing. How does a parent arrange when a driver needs to not drive, needs to ride the bus? What does that parent do?
And I know that Mr. Peterson has worked very closely to make sure we have a concise answer for that, so.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Ditweiler and the Transportation Department does their best to maintain a current roster of students on the bus, and there's many reasons for that. One is safety concerns, you know, who's actually riding that bus on a daily basis. The next is bus stops. If a student has a seat on that bus, then we need to match that up with where's the student getting on and off. And if it's in a development or a bus stop where numerous kids are getting on, it's not as big a problem. But of course, if it was a single student getting on there, and the bus driver wouldn't be stopping there every day if the student doesn't normally ride the bus. And then finally, the transportation formula and subsidies that are received from the state is very complicated, and they require that we do a good job of keeping those rosters. So all that being said, that's why the policies are in place that if a student gets a parking permit at the high school, then normally they remove that student from the bus because normally they won't be riding. However, if the parents call and request, they can be put back on that roster, and there's a flag put on there that says do not remove, which is a signal to the staff and the drivers and the transportation company that this kiddo won't be there every day, but may well show up sometime. The other important thing is that I think this is the most important question, and I asked it after your questions came in today. I said, okay, Mike, my name's taken off the bus, my child's name's taken off the bus list, and I don't call and get that changed, and now I need a ride, can I get on the bus? And the answer was yes. Now, keep in mind that there could be an issue where there's a capacity issue, but most of the time, the student's going to be able to get on, especially if they show up at a bus stop where other students go. Again, the problem's going to be is if it isn't a designated bus stop and that kiddo hasn't been there for 2 months and then is waiting by the street, the bus driver's not prepared to stop at that stop. So we work with the parent. We'll put them back on when requested. A lot of folks don't worry too much about it because the students never ride the bus. But in an urgent or emergency situation, they will be able to get on the bus.
I can just add, as a parent, my son was a senior last year, and these kids' cars break down sometimes. He never had a problem getting on the bus. But we're at a designated stop where there's multiple kids, but No one ever said no, he was always able to, so.
And if a parent is to call, it typically takes a day. So if it is a singlet, a stop that you need to notify transportation, it typically can happen in a day. Just call and let them know it will not take any longer than 3 days. But it's great to follow up with that communication, just to be sure that the child is picked up, especially when they're not at a bus stop with other students.
And who should the parents be calling? The transportation department or somebody in your administration?
Well, typically, much of that information for buses goes to, they typically will call their building, the building secretary. However, if they directly call transportation, that would be the most direct line, because if they go through their building, there's nothing wrong with that. But what will happen is the building secretary will then contact transportation and let them know. So to not have that delay, if they call the director of transportation or the transportation department, and that information will be shared and tracked.
And then my last question, Chuck, I'm going to give this one to you. So my understanding is that every child is assigned a bus unless they are the students that are drivers. It's also my understanding that if they do not consistently ride the bus, they're removed from the bus rolls. And I do understand the reason for that. But we have some kids who work after school, they get a ride to work, they're consistently riding the morning bus, inconsistently riding the afternoon bus. What can we do to help these parents not have this mindless issue of having kids come home telling them, Mom, if I don't ride the bus for 10 days, I can't ride the bus anymore. And this mom knowing that these kids have to inconsistently ride. Is it the same thing? Do they call transportation, or is that a different layer?
Yes, the policy that we administer is that if a student doesn't ride the bus for 10 consecutive days, then they're removed, unless the parents request that the seat's maintained, and then they get that do not remove flag. But even more important again is, if they do forget and they're removed, they're still going to be able to get on the bus, and then there'll be some correspondence with the family to try to find out if it's going to become consistent or it isn't. But we work with the families and make sure we accommodate.
I mean, the biggest issue, I think, is that it's not like that seat's going to be given to somebody else, right? The issue is, like you said, if it's a single stop for a single child, and the bus driver goes by there 20 times and there's no child, well, on day 21, they're not going to be looking or whatever, right?
Exactly.
And that's where the gap occurs. If it's in a neighborhood where there's 20 other kids getting on the bus, one or two more because the kid needs to ride the bus, it's not going to be really an issue or even noticed. It's those single street, single stops that become more of the issue, right?
Yes, in 99% of the time. Now, again, there could be a time when the bus is at capacity, either 72 or 84, and, just depending on those bus routes, but that's going to be the minority of the time. And if they call in advance, then we're going to accommodate that, make sure we have enough room for the students.
Just got two follow-up questions there. And I was thinking some of the same things you were, so thank you for asking those. When you said there's 4,600 kids on the bus, roughly, I forgot the number you said, is that the total number of kids in our district plus the 5 private school kids that we have to transport, or is that the number of kids who actually ride the bus?
That's all of them. All the students we're transporting,
So
including.
that's not the possible universe, that's actually the ones,
Yes.
minus the ones who don't take the bus?
Correct.
And then the second question, I did hear recently from a friend in a neighboring district that in high school, their kids or the parents need to opt in and out of the bus on electronically, that they, somehow in the beginning of the year, vote my child's gonna take the bus or not, and then they can opt back in. Is that something we've ever, I don't know if we need it or not, but it just surprised me that they even exist, and it sounds interesting, especially if these issues that Ellen raised, are coming about, that you actually opt into a bus. Because there's elementary school kids too, whose parents don't want them getting on the bus and drive them every day, and if at the beginning of the year they could just opt out, you wouldn't have to, have the bus driver looking for them and that sort of thing.
It was my understanding that that was an option years ago that was attempted.
Oh,
What it has morphed into is you're given a bus stop, and unless you call and say you don't want that bus, then it goes to if you don't show up for 10 days. So that's how it's morphed into that, because what was happening is some people were opting out of the bus, not realizing what they were doing, and then didn't really understand that then their child did not have a ride.
I do also know historically that bus routes vary in the afternoon because a certain chunk of kids in secondary school are doing band or sports or theater or whatever and don't ride home. So that bus schedule, because I know that when all those events get canceled, sometimes those buses are extremely full because all of a sudden every kid needs a ride home versus, or the week between the two sports sessions, right?
A little more crowded.
A little more crowded, but in general, that's also taken into account that those buses, because we don't want to be running buses 10% full,
Right.
right? So we try to, and Mike does a good job of balancing that all out, so.
So if I may, because I really want this to be clear for the parents, so we do have rules. The good news is, it is our intention to get every child to school, and there is busing available for every child. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we do have some rules and some policies. If your child does not fit within the policy the way it's written, busing is available. Contact either the transportation department or the building that your child goes to school in, and they can work anything out for you.
Hey, Ellen, we actually, to the best of my knowledge, don't have an actual policy. Now, the transportation department may have one, but maybe it's just something where we could check to see if it's up on the web, because I'm not aware of it, and this is all news to me, so.
Will you do that, Steph? Can you guys look at that to see?
Yeah, I'm absolutely 100% sure we do not have a policy.
There's no policy.
Okay.
Because I went through every single one of them, paid line by line, word by word.
So it's our procedure, not a board policy.
Yeah, I don't even have a.
Thank you.
I don't personally have a procedure that we reviewed for it, but there should be something out there. Maybe the idea is to touch base with transportation and find out what it is.
I
and
can take care of
that'd be great, thank you.
I just
don't want anybody looking under policies
Yeah,
for what
right.
it is.
I just have updates on facilities before we move over to food service. The facilities committee meetings. Again, the first facility committee meeting for the 2019-2020 school year will be on October 15th. It will be held at the high school, I believe most likely in the cafeteria. It will be held beginning at 6 p.m., then transitioning to the auditorium for the 6:30 presentation by the Schrader Architect Group, including the feasibility study information,
An update.
an update. And we'll have a presentation next week that will just be a brief presentation to scratch the surface, to give the high level. On October 15th, it will be a much deeper dive looking at each individual building on capacity, as well as what is projected to be fixed within the next 10 years.
And on a personal note, if any school board candidates are watching this and interested in attending, please do, because this information is going to be forefront in the next
Absolutely.
4 years that you're on the board.
So the first meeting is October 15th. The second meeting will be held November 12th, beginning at 6:30 in the high school cafeteria. That will be the second facilities committee meeting of the year. And that will be a work session that will involve work groups looking at possibilities and potential, and that will be run by the Schrader Architect Group as well. December 9th will be the final meeting involving the feasibility study. That will be held December 9th at 6:30 p.m., again held in the high school cafeteria. A lot of this information I'll make sure we keep repeating, but I just wanted to give the landscape of what we're looking at for the remainder of 2019, with the goal of 2020 in January, that options are presented to the board for consideration moving forward. The second, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask, when you mentioned those were in the high school and there's working groups, when they presented, when Schrader presented to us, they talked about getting community input and how important that was. Is that what is happening at those meetings?
Yes.
So there'll be outreach to the community, the school
Yes.
community, to have people come?
The outreach will be for the meetings on November 12th at 6:30 in the high school cafeteria and December 9th at 6:30 in the high school cafeteria. The expectation is that community members and anyone who is interested in being involved, if there are students who have, would like to have a voice in the process as well, staff members, administrators, it will be open to all. And the more voices in the room at the pre-planning stages, the more solid the options will be in the presentation to the board in January. In response to the question of projected full-day kindergarten classes versus actual, there were, the projection was for 14 kindergarten classes, with the number being 306 new kindergartners. The actual is 15 kindergarten classes, so we are one over the actual, which was
Not bad.
very close, very, very well done. So I thank Dr. O'Toole and Dr. Beck for providing that information.
Moving on.
Yep.
Okay, we're to food service, and I'd like
Oh,
to.
real quick, there's just an approval for a new bus driver also
Oh,
for
yes,
next.
thank
right?
you. Yes, we mentioned that at the last meeting, that the school code requires that the board approves bus drivers, and so we plan on putting those on each month. The Auditor General's Department is paying particular attention to that right now, so when they come in to do our audit, we want to make sure that we've taken care of that. Okay. Under food service, I'd like to invite Nicole Malio to come up. She's our food services director, and we have some exciting news about our new Easy School Pay system. Nicole, thank you.
So this year, the food service department moved from Pay School Central to Easy School Pay for online credit card payments to meal accounts. And we did this for a couple reasons. One of them being that Easy School Pay allows parents to set spending limits and limit their a la carte purchases on the parent side. Prior to this, with with Pay School Central, they had to call our office, and then we manually made those changes. So now it gives the parents all the control over their child's account. The parents are able to see the transactions for the past 14 days, so they can log on and see what their child is purchasing. We went from a percentage fee to a flat fee of $2.50. And a benefit of this program also is that parents can create an account and access all of the reporting features and the a la carte and purchase spending limit restrictions without ever entering any credit card information and without having to make payments through the system. So they can do it and just monitor the account that way. As always, we always take cash and checks at the register. You can send it in with your students, and they'll give it to, in the elementary level, it'll go to their teacher and come down to the cafeteria. It can be done at the registers. You can also drop checks or cash off at any of the offices, and we will make those deposits. You want to go to the next slide? Another exciting thing that we are able to offer and that has been asked for by the teachers is that we are able to create teachers and staff accounts for Easy School Pay, so they can load their account with credit card as well. This system also, and another one of the reasons why we really wanted to move over to this system, is because it integrates seamlessly with our eTrition software, which is our register point of sale software. So there's not any external imports or exports. It's all a seamless system, which has worked out really nicely for us. So far, we actually have 1,409 users as of 5 minutes ago, which is really exciting. So it's been great so far.
With the integration with eTrition and the point of sale, is it easier, more transparent for parents to be able to look at what their children are eating each day, and if they would like to block certain things? Is that possible through this integration? I know that was one of the things that you had spoken about.
Yeah, so they can't Yes, it is, but they can't block individual items, so they can't say, I don't want my child to have a pretzel or ice cream, but you can set spending limits or block à la carte altogether.
Spending limits a day? For
Yes,
instance, oh,
yeah, like I want my child just to spend $5 in the cafeteria a day, and it caps it at that.
15 years too late.
Any other questions? I had the opportunity to test it out because I have 3 children on the system, so I'm one user but 3 kids, and it was great.
Good.
It was really, really great, so thank you.
Yeah, we've had really good feedback, and on our side, it's been wonderful, so.
So Nicole, you can block all the à la carte if they want to?
Anything else?
I apologize for putting you on the spot, but you sent me an email today. I was wondering if you could do a quick commercial for your Malvern lunch day that's coming up?
I had a feeling you would ask me about that. So October 3rd is, across the state of Pennsylvania, they're doing PA Preferred Day, and it's October 3rd in the cafeteria. So we're having the main entree at all of the schools in the elementary, middle, and high is locally sourced. So the chicken's coming from New Holland, Pennsylvania. The kale chips and the garden salad are coming from our very own Katie Mart, our garden out here, our food service garden. And we're getting local apples from Free-Con Farms. So we'll be celebrating PA Preferred Day on October 3rd. Yes. Yep.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right, on to finance.
Okay, moving right along. This evening, we have the proposed building budget, student allocation, which will be on the agenda next week. And I would view this as a preliminary report, although we'll be asking for board approval. We might very well come back later with some requested adjustments, and there are several reasons for that. One, as you all know, we're working with Decision Insight on projections, and as we get a better idea of how their projections match ours, it might merit some changes. And then also, this allocation includes athletic, transportation, and gate receipts, and security, and band transportation. And we need a little bit more time to analyze the actual spending in those budgets over the last couple of years and make sure that we're adequately budgeting for it. So, but for now, we left those line items the same as they were last year. To start with on this report, we have an allocation here to show you that's 1920, what the line items, the secondary allotment per student and the elementary allotment per student. And then we have the proposed for 2021. That has been increased by 1%. And the logic behind that is that when I studied the previous budget processes, we went for a 3-year period without increasing these allotments at all. And last year, we increased it by the index, which was 2.3%. As we get further in the agenda here, very next item, we're going to talk about the Act 1 index. I guess I'll just combine it. That hasn't been released yet, but it's projected to be 2.6%. And the folks that do that analysis are pretty good at it, so I won't be surprised if it comes right in at 2.6%. So last year, it was 2.3%. We went up that amount for the first time, and it would be almost a 4-year period. So I thought, for the purposes of this initial thing, if we just did 1% a year, if the index keeps coming in hovering around that 3% mark, we'll still be doing about the same. But I think it'll help the schools a little bit rather than freezing the line item for 3 years. Listed here, we have the 4 elementary schools and their projected kindergarten enrollment. And again, these are the projected numbers, so if you look at the numbers we showed you on the 3rd day, they're not going to match. These are our district projections, which again, we'll update if it's warranted after Decision Insight gives us their information. So we have our total K-5. We have our gifted and special ed numbers here. We have the total elementary. And then we do the same thing for middle school and high school. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there's also money here for athletics and transportation and the estimated gate receipts, and so on. This is called a weighted allocation because these numbers have weighting behind them that takes high school, secondary at a 1.3, so it's 30% higher. Middle school is a 1.2 or 1.25. The gifted and special ed enrollments are inflated by 0.4 of, so these are weighted. It's exactly the way it's been done in the past, and the numbers don't change a whole lot. Overall, that even though we're only going up by 1% and keeping these other line items the same, it still rolls out a 2.9% increase overall because our projected enrollment's increasing. So as we allocate on a per student basis, if the enrollment goes up, the total number is gonna go up also. So the total district, we were at 1,614,000 in this current year's budget. And if we stayed with this projection, we would be at 1,662,000. So that's our best estimate for now, but we'll keep the board informed and may come back and ask you to alter this after the next meeting.
One of the benefits of this analysis, and thank you, Mr. Peterson, because with ESSA, with the new Elementary and Secondary Schools Act, that one of the requirements is that schools will have to report out the amount of money and the services provided per building because they're doing an analysis. And it's most applicable in large districts or city schools where they're looking for disparity. But having the formula and being very transparent about it really gives you an advantage when you're asked questions of how did you arrive at this number and why does one school seemingly get more resources than another? It is not magic. It's purposeful on enrollment and additional costs for additional needs.
Any questions on that? Okay, we have some contracts on here. Well, I skipped over Act 1, I mentioned that a minute ago. So it's, if you look in that line, in that item there, it's projected to be 2.6%, and we'll let the board know as soon as that official notice comes out. We have quite a few contracts on here. Several of them are for our technology department. The 9.03 is the Cisco annual these are mostly all annual contracts. And so Cisco's controls all our routing, all our network administration. We have the data center annual maintenance, so that includes HVAC and the fire suppression system and things like that. The DocuShare is a database program used mostly for storing IEPs and special ed documents. The Presto software is a program that allows the students and others to use to send print jobs using their iPads. The Relay program is the one that we talked about at the last meeting that is going to give us the ability to monitor the web activities and limit the web activities even when the devices are off-site. The school messenger, again, is an annual approval. What are we using that one for, Regina, do you know? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh,
I
no,
forgot
no
to
problem.
look
Our
that
school
one.
messenger is our communication system that we use to communicate messages home, messages within the school, messages externally. Yes, and that's again an annual contract. 9.09 is prepare, train the trainer, and we've talked about that. A portion, or I'm sorry, all of this training is being covered by the grant that we received for Safe Schools. This training is a part of a series. The Train the Trainer has taken place, and I want to thank Dr. Wexler for organizing this. Not only did she organize it for our trainers, it then we became the training site for others, so we also housed other trainers from around the county to become prepared trained, and that is our crisis response. We've really done a great job in having our key people trained, and the goal is to expand that training. The next is a private school agreement with Overbrook School for the Blind for a student. The renewal of Justicor, and we use
Ask about that one. I noticed it was for, sorry, I thought I was on speaker. I had a question about the Overbrook School for the Blind. I know we have agreements with schools when the children need to go there for their education. This is for an aid, a one-on-one aid. Would that be in addition to, are we paying for a tuition plus an aide, or is it an aide that comes to our school to help the child?
This is for an aide that would be required at that school.
So in addition to the tuition, they need an aide, okay.
Yes. Just-a-Core Nursing Services. This is for supplementary services. So if we need a nurse substitute, we need a substitute or a nurse for an overnight trip. We need a nurse for a non-public. We have the contract, the agreement with Just-a-Core to call them to fulfill that service, most specifically for RNs, for registered nurses. I'm sorry.
The SOS agreement is an addendum to the existing agreement, and as different positions are requested, we update that agreement. Most recently, we had a temporary help in the student enrollment area with the retirement and the new employee. We needed some help there. We had some assistance for the athletic director. So those positions were added on to there. Both of those positions are done with they're helping us already. And there are other positions that are listed on that contract were existing positions we were already using. Any questions on any of those contracts?
Just one question on the Cisco contract. What are the quantities here? Like, we have quantities of 9,770 each. Are those switches, ports? I think it's the exact same quantities I saw last year that I was confused on.
Do you know the answer to that, Candy?
Switches.
Those are all of our Cisco switches across the whole entire network.
So we have 9,000 switches in the network?
Well, no, we have roughly 30 switches.
Yeah.
But of each of those, they have 45 ports. in it.
Okay, so they were paying for the ports. Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Candy.
I had a question on nurses. Don't we employ a part-time nurse for the non-public schools?
Yes, we do have a nurse for non-public. This would be supplementary if we need to.
Substitute or,
nurses
supplemental,
or
okay. All right,
additional
that's what I
nurses.
thought.
Having that contract is wonderful because if Dr. Wexler or Dr. Gafredo has to make a call, we already have the contract. We're not having
Gotcha.
to negotiate cost.
I was just reading it.
Right.
Specified some private schools. I thought we already had those covered, but this is just in addition to or substitute for or whatever might be needed. Okay.
That's all we have under contract, so.
Anybody got any questions on any of them? Good. All right, other PSBA election.
So we'll vote on that next week, and I will make a recommendation to the board. Everything is in the work session. You can take a look at it, and then I'll come back to you with a recommendation, and we can vote on it.
All right.
You didn't have any comments to address, any public comments?
Nope. All right, then the draft agenda's there for a review for next week.
Under board comments?
Oh, sorry. Any other committee reports? Board comments?
I actually had two questions on topics we didn't touch on tonight. One is, last year, there was quite a bit of work done by the administration on starting a D&I committee. I'm not sure what an official name was going to be, but a diversity committee. And I'd like to know what the next steps, when the meeting is, and were the participants selected? When will they know if they don't know? I'd love to get a brief update, and then I have a separate question after.
Absolutely. Yes, we sent out the survey at the end of last school year. One of the focus groups, I believe it was June 12th, if I'm not mistaken, centered around bringing in Jeannie Stanley, which is one of the partners we have for diversity and inclusion. Some of the feedback that was received through that focus group from the staff, if you remember, we sent the invitation and asked people to apply if they were interested in being on that committee. We sorted out representation from who we would select from that committee based on diversity of the committee, as well as looking at each building representation, community members, staff members, et cetera. The feedback that we received from the staff through Jeannie Stanley and the focus group was that they felt as though some of the staff members felt very rushed. They received the invitation and didn't really have time to apply. So we extended that. All those who applied received notification that they are being considered to be a part of the committee. Dr. Wexler, Ms. Blake, and myself have created, it's not really a rubric, it's a spreadsheet to make sure we're getting equal representation of the areas of focus. So the follow-up will be, we are working with Jeannie Stanley and her group, as well as, I believe it's Watershed is the name of her group. And we also have done some work with Ken Ginsberg, Dr. Ginsberg, who will be working with us. So the next steps, when the committee is selected, those folks will be invited to come to a meeting, and we're looking at October. Most likely be the beginning of October. Yes, that's our timeline.
Just encourage us to give as much warning that would be to notify people with as much time as possible, because I know that the people who applied are very interested, and they'll need time to clear their calendars,
Absolutely.
maybe, yeah.
Thank you.
I have a second totally separate question, but we've all seen the news recently on the dangers of vaping. We knew it was dangerous before, and now it's very clear that it's very dangerous. And I know we've had issues with vaping in our schools, and that we, have education and protocols in place, to help educate parents and children. Are we doing anything more in light of what we learned? I mean, on the parent end, I can tell you I'm seeing emails and texts and Facebook things fly about parents trying to, now that they really see, they're very concerned, and I would hope that as a school district, we're doing something to get the education out. I'd love to know if there's any plans there.
We can continue to share. If you remember last year, I'm not sure if any of you were in attendance at the vaping presentation, which was very powerful. We can send that information home as well. The benefit of the speaker series is not only the information being shared via presentation and PowerPoint, but actually being a part of those conversations. So certainly we can, I know the Clearing the Air speaker series event, that's not being held until the spring. So we can always look at offering something sooner than that as well to get that information out.
And maybe ask others, but
Definitely
certainly with the
concerned.
deaths that have been in the news in the past week, it's become very much on the forefront of a lot of discussion.
Absolutely.
Regina, we had asked Wayne Milne to sponsor some legislation prior to him leaving office. Did anything ever come of that?
No. The legal position that we were talking to him about was, right now, for tobacco products, there can be a citation issued that can be up to $300 for students that would have tobacco products on school property. That is not, e-cigarettes were not included in that legal code. And that was the position to try to get that through. It's not an easy process, so there just wasn't enough time left in his term. I know he was very interested in making that happen, however, there just wasn't the time. He didn't have the time to make it happen. At this point, the health concerns seem to be making more of an impact on use than the fear of a fine. So.
But as a public school system, I mean, number one, of course, everything that happens in the world happens here at school, because what our kids do isn't suspended for those hours they're with us. We need legislation, because the problem, they're going to figure out the health issues and the health concerns. Vaping seems to be like it's going to be a problem. There's nothing to prevent us, or there's nothing for allowing us to prevent or fining them or.
Well, independent of the legislation, our policy
Right.
that we have in place does include e-cigarettes. So we have a policy, and our high school administration and middle school administration implements that policy, which is the disciplinary policy, our discipline code. So there are consequences for vaping, just as there are for cigarettes. So not having the legislation to allow citations and fines does not preclude us from implementing the discipline code as it is written. So it's really not as large of a hurdle for us. It's more the hurdle for the police. They cannot act upon it as they do other things. So for us, it would have given additional leverage, but it's not precluding us from following the discipline code and treating e-cigarettes as any other tobacco product.
Yeah, I know when we had talked about it, we had thought at first that maybe because there was no legislation in place, would not make the teeth in our policy, not make our policies have teeth. So then that's come full circle, and that's, okay, great, thank you. So we are then a good partner doing whatever we can do. Thank
Our,
you.
our policies always have teeth and are always enforceable. What it doesn't allow us to do is say, this 15-year-old was caught with a product that's illegal.
Right.
Because by definition of the law, tobacco is illegal, and e-cigarettes aren't for the school district. So they can't write them a fine.
But we
That's
can
what-
still
We can
implement
still,
our consequences.
correct. Yep, and we do.
That's important, thank
I just have one update on vaping and the information that will be shared. Dr. Wexler is working with our school nurses to get some information. There's a lot of medically involved information that is very confusing, and they're working on making it much more bulleted and to the point, so folks will actually take the time to read it and get the crystallized points without having to read a number of medical reports on that. So I thank Dr. Wexler for working with the nurses and making that happen.
Is this something we can ask for the student body to help us spread the word about once the materials are ready for consumption?
Absolutely.
We could also use the Instagram, or I already have a couple things I'm planning on putting up there, but we can add more.
All right. Draft agenda is there for review. Any comments from anyone in the public? Dan laughs, but there's a couple public. There's a couple taxpayers here.
All taxpayers, just not maybe a great value.
Well, there's a couple Great Valley taxpayers, so. The two of you are good, all right. All right, the board met in executive session beforehand for some personnel and legal issues. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good evening.